Hi, and welcome to another episode of You Haven't Seen What? A couple's quest to rectify the wrongs of their partner never seeing culturally relevant movies. Oh, wait, I didn't say married.
Yeah, let's go ahead and start it over then.
Why?
Oh.
I mean, we're married.
Well, for the first-time listener, we're married.
Yes, we're married.
If you've never listened to this podcast before, the idea is that we're a married couple. Still.
I'm Joelle.
I'm Parry.
So today we're talking about Bull Durham, to which I had never seen, oddly.
Strangely, as a baseball fan, you had never seen it.
As a baseball fan, right? But my baseball came in later in life. It came in my 30s. So I wasn't always a baseball fan, I guess.
Nor was I. It actually came in later for me as well. In fact, I was never really a true diehard fan of any sport. I didn't grow up with them really in my family, and so I was more of a fan of film, and like many of us film-type nerds, 3 hours kind of seemed like time to watch a movie and, some special features or read an article about it or watch the documentary on the making of it, and so that's kind of how we would spend that same time, but later I was introduced to baseball, and
you can say by your ex-wife. That's okay.
Okay, yes, by my ex-wife, introduced me to it, and with some resistance, and started going to games in L.A., going to the Dodgers and going to the Angels, and learned to love it.
Yeah, I lived in Texas, and like everything in Texas, you just embrace all the sports all the time. And, the Texas Rangers were completely on fire back then, with Ron Washington leading the charge. Not so much on fire right now. But, who knows? Things can always look up. And I think as we got together, we just started visiting a lot of baseball parks. And, of course, we live in Florida. So spring training is very accessible to us. So we've gone to a couple of different spring training parks. And seen a couple of different teams, not just our home team of the Marlins, but also, the Cardinals, the Tigers, the Red Sox. Sorry, I should clarify there. Red Sox. Who else have we seen?
Phillies.
Who else? There's so many.
Yeah, we've seen a bunch of, and there's so many more still we haven't seen here.
Exactly.
And the great thing is that spring training, even though these are major league players, the ballparks and the atmosphere is more like minor league ball.
It really is, in a way. I think what's interesting is everything as a whole. So spring training really allows you to at least get closer to your beloved players than you would ever possibly be. You're sitting closer. I think relatively it's cheaper, pretty much.
Not those beers and dogs at that last game.
Not the food necessarily, but the tickets I think are relatively cheaper.
Yeah.
And it's just an easier experience.
And even though there are a lot of players on those teams that are trying to earn a place on the final roster, there's still something more playful and joyful about the spring training games. Not that a major league game isn't a wonderful thing, but I don't know. I think for the players who pretty well feel like they're guaranteed a spot, they're just having a great time at spring training. And then some of the others who are not so sure might be taking it a bit more seriously. Not that they all don't, but I don't know. There's just something a little lighter about spring training to me, and it's always fun to like you say, be closer to the action and feel like you're more a part of it.
Right. So in that vein, we decided to go ahead and do Bull Durham because, well, it's about baseball. In case you didn't know,
which some might not, because the title does not really indicate to the uninitiated that this is about baseball. And in fact, I have a question for you. Can you name,
why,
other than Albuquerque,
why,
the name of any minor league team? Single A, double A, triple A?
The Durham Bulls.
Okay, other than the Durham Bulls.
No, because who the hell goes to minor league? Actually, a lot of the spring training facilities do host minor league games, and that was the whole point, is that they're not just a spring training facility. They also have their minor leagues within that facility.
And for those that don't know, major league teams, just like in other sports, there are teams that feed into them, and that's what the minor league teams are. These are teams where they're playing eventually, hopefully, to go to the big show of the majors. And sometimes you make it, and often you don't. There are so many that don't, but they're really battling for that reputation. And so going to minor league parks can actually be a really exhilarating experience, because some of these guys are playing super hard because they want to move on to that next level. And you'll see some amazing talent that might never actually make it up to the big game for whatever reason. But those parks are always a lot of fun. And I admit I had been to a couple as a kid, but it wasn't until I started going in Albuquerque that I really started appreciating minor league parks. And that team there, formerly the Dukes in the old days, but these days known as the Albuquerque Isotopes. And for anyone who is a Simpsons fan, you'll know that reference, that when they were going to move the Springfield Isotopes to Albuquerque, there's a great scene where Homer's holding up one of the jerseys he's discovered, and he says, "The Albuquerque Isotopes."
Woo! Topes rule!
And well, Albuquerque took that and ran with it, and they play that clip, and they have Simpsons characters around the park.
Looks like we'll have to steal some other baseball team. See what Dallas wants for the Cowboys.
That's a football team, sir.
They'll play what I tell them to play. For I am the mayor of Albuquerque.
So if you're ever in Albuquerque, go see a game.
Yeah, it's actually pretty fun. But I guess we digress, because really, if you don't know what Bull Durham is about, it is about baseball, and it's also about that minor league team. So it's really going ahead and saying, hey, you're trying to get into the show, get into the majors. So that's the interesting part about it, is that you're really seeing them not live the life of the most glamorous baseball player. It's really the down and out, traveling on the bus, sharing a room,
low grade room, low grade bus.
Yes, carrying your own equipment. So it's not the life of this major league baseball player where everything's being done for you. Like, it sucks. Like, you're schlepping everything around, just trying to make it into something that you've pretty much poured your entire life into. So just to sort of set the stage about what Bull Durham's about, if you don't know, and why it's actually such a cool film to watch.
If you've ever seen Major League, that's sort of almost the spoof version in a way. It's sort of a jokey version of this movie, which seems very much like it was inspired in many ways. And some of the characters even seem like they are direct lifts. Whether or not they were, they really much feel like it, especially with Charlie Sheen's character.
And now we're way ahead. So synopsi.
All right. So when you love a sport as much as someone like Crash Davis loves baseball, you're
already
willing to...
too long. Go ahead.
You're willing to take any job, even mentoring a talented idiot, just to stay close to the game. But can love of another sort make you forget about the game, even just a little?
That's way too long for the insert. Way too long.
Okay, well, let's hear yours.
Baseball is a game about winning or losing. Love is very similar to baseball.
All right.
Done.
Yeah.
Ching ching.
I love it. We could put that on a label and stick it on a folder, so that's perfect.
Listen, that's bumper sticker worthy. That is bumper sticker worthy.
Well, and I think what we were both kind of getting at here was that this is not really just a sports film. And
it's so not a sports film at all.
And I think that's where this film gets confused a little bit. I don't think there's ever been a movie about any other sport, including baseball, that's as deep and meaningful as this particular film in things that are not about sports. However, I do feel like baseball films are different than other sports films, because baseball was really the first American sport and will always be considered more deeply integrated into the fabric and the nostalgia of America. And I feel like it's a little more cerebral as a sport, and it's because it's about patience and long game strategy. And not that you don't have strategy in football and basketball and all other sports, but I don't know, I just feel like the way the game plays out is much more poetic and less chaotic. And I feel like
that's your own personal bias.
It is. And I feel like baseball fans they're historians and nostalgics, and I would say romantics, and some of that nostalgia is kind of manufactured as much nostalgia, but we'll let that go. But I don't know. Given all that, this is not really so much a baseball movie as a story about passion and obsession. And that's where I think people get confused is they will rate it on their lists of greatest sports movies and sometimes really bash it as one and say it's overrated and not a good sports movie.
It's so not overrated.
But
It's
I think
amazing.
because you can't judge it against other sports movies, like it's not Hoosiers, it's not Any Given Sunday, it's not the same type of movie. It's more of a hybrid of several different types of stories blended
yeah, because
together.
you're talking about, I mean, so all of those other movies you're talking about, it's a different level. So you're talking about things that are either like they're the most competitive or they're at a higher level. This is like, I'm just young and scrappy and trying to make it happen. Or alternatively, I'm on my way out and I'm still trying to make it happen. So there's that big difference. You're having that juxtaposition, and then cue a romantic triangle, and here we have Bull Durham.
And I think in a way, too, it really captures what deeply sports are really about. The heartache and innate unfairness of sports that
You're so dismal.
sometimes those that care the most are not the ones that make it.
You're so dismal.
Well, Nuke loves baseball because it's going to make him famous and rich, and he just likes being good at it, whereas Crash loves the game itself. There's just something deeply within him that he really, really loves it. And I think it was Jim Bouton who said...
But don't you think those are just really two opposing characters that they've oversimplified so that you go ahead and get those messages?
Yes, I would agree.
So
I would agree, and I think that's
I don't know
in
that
all
that's
sports. So.
Yeah, I don't know that that's true in actual real life. You think there's really like a Nuke Lelouch running around like an idiot?
I do.
I mean, there's probably one in every camp, but I mean, they're really not the predominant piece that you see.
No.
Right.
No, but I do think it does show some of the goofiness and silliness that goes on in ball clubs of all types, and that some people are brilliant and deeply know the game, and others can play it, but they're morons. That even though they're amazing at the game, and I think it captures those personality types. What I think it really captures is something that Jim Bouton said, which was you spend your life gripping a baseball, and it turns out it was the other way around all along. That it was really gripping you and was controlling you because you so badly wanted to be a part of it and be involved in it.
So our cat just ran away into your closet because he says you're full of so much shit right now. It's incredible, basically. Like, that was like the most, like, I've never seen our cat do that ever. And he literally just ran away from you.
He has disappeared
into the depths of your closet, and he's fucking shit up right now because he just said that's such bullshit that you said.
I'm gonna have to vacuum out the whole closet now.
Yeah, pretty much. Come out, Jesse. I promise try to wrangle him in next time. Anyway, your favorite quote. Come on, podcast title. Favorite quote.
This movie is so well written
You
that
can do this.
there are a million good quotes.
You can do this.
Like, you couldn't hit water if you fell out of a fucking boat. Or, you think Dwight Gooden leaves his socks on?
No, okay. It's supposed to encapsulate the entire show. Like, this is the whole point. It's not like, is this a good line? It's whatever you're saying or whatever the quote should be should encapsulate this movie at a glance.
You'll never make it to the bigs with fungus on your shower shoes?
Actually, that does. That does.
Actually, one
does.
I really like, though, is either the rose goes in the front, big guy, which I think encapsulates the baseball part of this film with the relationship part. But there are two that I would go down to, which would be strikeouts are boring. Besides that, they're fascist. Or the
really?
world is made for people who aren't cursed with self-awareness.
That's what you're going with?
Those are ones I'm going with. Yeah, I might have to flip a coin to get it down to the last one.
No, you don't have to get it down to the last one because I have it. Obviously, again, I'm saving your ass in this episode. It is actually
As
when
usual.
It's actually when Nuke says, "A good friend of mine used to say, this is a very simple game. You throw the ball, you catch the ball, you hit the ball. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, sometimes it rains." Think about that for a while.
That's too long.
Shut up. No, it's not. Yours is crap.
Mine is not crap. Mine works.
Yours does not work. I love you. Yours does not work. We're having difference of opinions. You're too close to the subject. Ergo, why you're feeling the need to be so impassioned about it.
Perhaps.
Yes,
Perhaps.
I am not as well. That's not true. I'm a pretty raucousy baseball fan, but I don't take it to the same depths and levels. Maybe I just like cheering for my teams.
Yeah, and I really loved the way that this not only broke down the game, but connected it to how relationships work and created such brilliant characters that encapsulated those different personality types, but also had such an amazing character in the form of Annie Savoy, and had a female character who loves the sport, loves the players, and is totally in control of herself and how she approaches her love of the game and the players. And though she may not be considered the main character, I feel in many ways this was Annie's story.
I think we're heading as a good, bad, and ugly territory.
Well, yes, we are, because that's where my good is going to go.
Okay, that's your good. Is that your good?
Yeah. My good is definitely going to be Susan Sarandon as Annie Savoy.
So Susan Sarandon as Annie Savoy is your good, or is it the character of Annie Savoy? I'm trying to distinguish currently.
I don't know if you have one without the other. I think that when you
No.
look
Let's back up. There's a difference between Susan, and you know this, there's a difference between her portrayal of Annie Savoy
Yes.
and Annie Savoy as it's written as a character. So just think about that for a second.
I know. And I think it's a rare case where sometimes a great actor can make bad writing seem good. This is a case where the writing is so brilliant, but so is she, that I don't know if some of the other choices could have pulled it off as brilliantly, but I'll go with the writing. I will go with the writing on this one.
So you think that the character is actually your good?
I'll go with the character as my good there.
See,
yes.
no, I think it is the actress that is that good. So no, that's where you and I differ on this. I think Sarandon pulls it. I think the writing is great. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to go ahead and kill Ron Shelton at all. I'm saying that the writing is great, but I think that you don't have Annie Savoy without Sarandon at all. I think that if it's somebody else other than Sarandon, it flops. The entire movie flops.
And I would agree.
Ergo, so that it's Sarandon.
I would also say, though, that without the character of Annie Savoy at all, this movie is a much more run-of-the-mill baseball movie. It's still good, but it lacks a perspective that makes this one truly unique in comparison to the others. In fact, the first draft of this, I believe was called The Player to Be Named Later, was completely lacking the Annie character. She wasn't in there at all, and that's where Shelton went back on the advice of...
Well, then you have no conflict if there's no Annie character.
Right. You really... Right. Well, the conflict you'd have is Crash trying to teach Nuke. And for those who haven't seen it, Kevin Costner plays a seasoned minor league player named Crash Davis, who's been brought in to help a very talented but just completely out of control pitcher by the name of Ebby Calvin LaLouche, who they keep saying needs a nickname, and eventually, even though Costner calls him Meat throughout, eventually they land on Nuke being his
he
nickname.
Calls all pitchers Meat.
Yes.
So that's why.
So it actually comes from a conversation with Annie where Nuke comes out of it. And Annie she's a local around the team who every year picks out one player that she is going to have a love affair with. And she's an intellectual, she's an artistic type person, and she picks them and not only spends time with them and satisfies and receives satisfaction from them, but she...
No. You're sugarcoating that shit. She has sex with them the whole season.
She does.
She decides who she wants to have sex with the whole season, and that's to go ahead and groom them.
And she also teaches them a lot about themselves and about the world, and so she actually helps make them into better players in most cases. And except, however, she usually ends up alone at the end of the season. And what is it she says? What I give them lasts a lifetime. What they give me lasts 142 games.
That's exactly it. So you're bad because you're derailing.
I do want to say about my good real quick, something that Sarandon said, where she said that, I don't know if Bull Durham's Annie's story, but it was so revolutionary. Here's a woman who was on equal footing with the guys sexually, and she got to be the one to choose who she wanted to be with. She liked sex, and she liked sports, and at the end of the movie, she didn't have to die for it.
Yeah, in the 80s, that was really revolutionary.
Yes, and that's why I think...
Agreed, that piece of it was.
Yes.
Right.
But yes, jumping to the bad, I feel like there were some scenes that were edited out of the film. And when you read about these missing scenes, they actually add some extra depth to it. And there was one in particular, which is the character of, he's actually a real person, Max Patkin, known as the Clown Prince of Baseball. He was a comedian, and he would do this comic baseball character at parks all over the country. We see him performing at the beginning of the film, and then you see Annie speaking with him in a scene in the bar. Well, there was a scene later in the movie. You actually see her wearing a black dress and black veil because she was at his funeral, and that scene was cut. He was supposed to have been killed in a car crash. And what happens after that scene is that Crash and Nuke find out about his death while they're at an away game. And there's a scene where it's a shift in Nuke where the two of them have a conversation about life and death and everything in between. And that was supposed to be sort of that shifting point for Nuke, and that was taken out of the film. But I really think that scene, I think to me would have helped in that shift, because it just suddenly kind of happens, and I wanted a little bit more to link the transition between where Nuke is just sort of an out-of-control, self-absorbed idiot to where he starts to become a more serious ball player. And I don't think he's ever going to be like a Crash, who's truly like a professor when it comes to baseball. But he does turn into something a little different at the end, and we assume it's because of the time he's spending with Crash and with Annie. But I would have liked to see that particular conversation between them. And I feel like that was kind of a bad that was removed.
Okay.
How about
I
you?
It. My bad is that in one of the sex scenes, I think in the tub, they have like about a bajillion candles lit. And that shit looks like it's going to burn the freaking house down. Like, no one should ever do that. Number one, first of all, you know how much candles cost? Let's have that conversation, even in the 80s. And then if you had all those candles lit, like, you're burning the fucking house down. Like, that is a fire hazard. And I really feel like those scenes set women up for failure. Like, somebody's gonna get burned or the house is gonna catch on fire. I'm just saying, that's a bad idea.
Yeah, and the time it takes to light all those candles and get that whole bathtub ready.
No, dude, wax is dripping everywhere. The candles are out. It's just not a good thing. Like, dude, you need like 3 candles, like max.
And wax is really hard to clean once it gets like down in the grout and stuff. Getting all that stuff out is not easy. So,
speaking from experience,
yes,
not with me.
I never said it was in a bathtub, did I?
Okay. I'm just saying. I'm
just talking about candles in general and wax in general.
I'm watching you. You.
Yeah, I've never been dripping wax on anybody.
And you're ugly. Really? And you're ugly.
My ugly was coming back around to Sarandon. And I know that we have entered a new era when it comes to women in Hollywood.
Why are you looking at my notes? That's my question. But go ahead.
It was how Sarandon had to get the role, because the producers thought that she was too old and that she wasn't funny, and they really didn't want her in the role. And so to get the part, the producer, actually Tom Mount, had Sarandon go to Orion Pictures co-founder Mike Medavoy's office in a tight dress and lean over the desk as she's talking to him for, like half an hour. Since then, Sarandon has said that as a rule, most studio executives' strong suit isn't imagination. And so when you're trying to get a part, it helps for them to be able to envision you in the part. So she says, I went in there, dressed in that exact way with an off-the-shoulder red and white striped dress, very form-fitting, and it was understood what I had to do. And so I'm hoping we've seen the end of the days where this type of story will be told, where especially someone over a certain age has to...
Not at all.
Because that's what's so amazing about her in particular in the role, is that she was she 41, I think, when she was playing this role?
Right.
And she doesn't look as young as she did, say, in Rocky Horror. Like, she's not looking like Janet. She's looks amazing, but she's obviously an older woman especially with Nuke looking much younger, even though Tim Robbins wasn't that much younger than her. And something about that really makes it work in an extra way, that she still has this sensuality to her, even though she's not in her 20s or even her 30s. Because that's such a typical Hollywood trope, is that a woman over 40 is going to be motherly or playing a different type of character and not getting to play a character with this much sex appeal. And again, I think you're right in saying definitely that there's not a lot of people who could have pulled that off like Sarandon did.
No, and I just do have one actual thing about the character of Annie. And it's coming from a woman's perspective.
Mm-hmm.
In that Sarandon's life, Annie's life, because it's not Sarandon. Annie's life is literally wrapped up and defined by being with a man.
That is true.
And that is about the most, whether or not it's her choice, whether or not that's what she's chosen to do, that is literally the most pathetic thing I can ever think about. Mm-hmm. That her life and how she defines her success is based on how successful she can get this man to be. And in that way, it's very obvious that this was written by a male.
Right.
Because he doesn't see it as that. He sees this as a victory. Like, if the man, behind every successful man is a woman,
mm-hmm.
like, that's how he's writing it as. And he thinks that that's progressive. And in the 80s, it might have been considered progressive.
Right.
Right? That she's that sexually revolutionized woman who can go ahead and make her choices. She doesn't care how anybody thinks. But in the end, what you judge Annie by and what she is perceived by is her relationship with a man. Whether it's Nuke, whether it's Crash, that is how she is perceived. So looking at a different lens, looking at a very modern approach and,
mm-hmm.
and a feminist view, that's a bunch of crap. So there's that.
I would agree. I can see that. Absolutely. Now, what was the show? There was a show that came out recently, and it failed miserably. But there was, it was about first...
And there's an 11-year difference between the two of them, FY.
Oh, right. It was between Costner and...
Tim Robbins?
Yes, that the age difference wasn't as big as as it seemed in the film. So, but you're right. There was a bigger difference between Sarandon and Robbins.
Yeah, it's 11 years.
But I was going to say, there was a show that came out recently about the first female pitcher in Major League Baseball, and I think they were trying to update that angle, that it wasn't someone who's just on the periphery as a groupie. It was an actual female player. And unfortunately, the show did not work out. I never saw it. I don't even remember what it was called. But it seemed like they were kind of going for a more modern approach to that, was that, she wasn't a groupie. She was a player.
Right. Again, it's very difficult. I mean, the whole premise of it, and I understand like the grooming aspect of it and the sexual revolution, or how progressive that seemed at the time.
Right.
I just think if you knew more about Annie, you would have a larger sense. Like, she's like, oh yeah, I teach part-time. Like, you're getting the sense that this is all her life is about.
Right.
And this is the primary thing, and it's the prime and the only focus. And that she's not given additional depth as a result. So I think that's where the writing fell off. That's the only bad that I have in terms of this writing and in terms of the character development, is that you get many layers of Crash, you get multiple layers of Nuke, but you really just get one layer of Annie.
I would agree. And though it does not correct the issue that you've brought up, there was a scene that was not included in the film that helps explain how she developed her love for baseball. She was in Florida for the funeral of her father, and she was so dazed by his death and by the funeral that she goes wandering off, and she wound up at the Yankees spring training facility and ends up having a conversation with Thurman Munson, who was a player who later died in a plane crash. And that's the picture that is at the center of her shrine. And at the end, when they zoom into the picture, that's Thurman Munson. And so it was supposed to be that she developed it through her conversation with him and about her explaining what the deep meanings of baseball are. And it sort of helped to give a little more depth to why this has become such an obsession for her. But you're right, it still does not correct that issue of her connecting her own self-worth
An identity
to a man.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just one of those things.
Mm-hmm.
Hollywood. Yeah.
Well, and again, it puts this film in the context of its time.
Yes, it does.
You know, it's still, even though I like to look at it as Annie's story, it's still really the story of these two white guys playing baseball. And she is still, even in her name, because an Annie is a baseball groupie.
Yes.
And so her name even means groupie.
Yeah.
So.
It's like she just got a higher elevated status other than a groupie. She's like a sought after groupie. Yeah, the more we talk about it, the more I don't like it. Anyway.
And I and
which is slightly upsetting to me, because I think that the movie, for all that it's, for everything else, there are some very poetic scenes in it. There are some there's definite chemistry between all three of these actors on screen. So I don't want to diminish any of that piece at all. I just think that, does it, like we always talk about, does the movie hold up? Mm-hmm. And pieces of it, I think, hold up very well. I think the writing, for the most part, is actually very beautiful. For the most part, I just think that it's just challenging. Like, if you're a dude watching this, which really that's the target audience, right? So if I'm a guy watching this, then yeah, it totally holds up to me. But as a woman, it's sort of like, wait a minute, like, bro, Annie had a day job. Like, why aren't we talking about that? Why aren't we seeing where she's at with that? Like, or, that she chooses to stop or start. And in the 80s, it was very progressive, like women making that choice and a single woman making that choice and not being deemed as something else. So I'm very torn as to whether or not this holds. I don't think that it holds up. I think at the time it was considered progressive. But 30 years later, I'm not sure from a feminist perspective that it holds up.
Right. No,
So.
I see the point, and it's even worse for Millie.
Yeah.
Because she's even given less of a personality, and really she is shown as being even more of a toy of the players, and because she's just sleeping with everybody.
Yeah, even like they made baseball cards for this. So like you have Nuke's card says rookie pitcher, Crash's says veteran catcher, Annie Savoy says unofficial trainer and handler, but Millie says groupie in training. So yeah. Oh, that just made me sad. I'm sorry. And it's not a sad movie. That's the bad part, is that I actually enjoy the movie for the most part. I think it was that one lasting piece that sort of bugged me at the very end. But
her resolution is also really weird in that they have her marry a guy. She's one of the players who is the highly religious player who...
Oh, Millie.
Neither of them really know each other, but they end up getting married, and you don't get the impression this marriage is necessarily going to work out so well. That both of them have rushed into this not really knowing who they're marrying.
I mean, isn't that true for a lot of sports players, though? Isn't that true for a lot of marriage in general?
Yes.
I mean, hashtag you're on your second wife.
Right. The concept
Not
of
that you rush
the
into
starter husband or wife. So
I did not say that. You said that.
I said the concept of.
Oh, I know. You said that. Mm-hmm. I didn't say that.
Especially for our generation. I've been hearing some very interesting things about millennials in terms of the divorce rate really dropping. But of course, millennials are still young. So we'll see what happens when they all get into their 30s and 40s and hit middle age.
And decide that they want to do something different.
Right.
Or don't grow with each other any longer.
Yes. Yeah, or grow in different directions.
Yeah. That happens. Anyway, so let's not go down this sad road anymore, and let's do production notes with Parry. I'm going to take you off the top. Let's see. Directed by Ron Shelton, produced by Tom Mount and Mark Berg, written by Ron Shelton, Trey Wilson, Robert Wool, W-U-H-O. I think that's right, right? Cinematography, Bobby Byrne, edited by Robert Layton and Adam Weiss, distributed by Orion. Release date was June, I think that's 15th, 1988. Running time of 108 minutes, so it could have been a little bit longer. Budget was 7.5. Box office, 58 million. So good job for them. IMDb scored it a 7.1 out of 10. Critics rated it 97% on Rotten Tomatoes, and 82% of the audience liked it. And I think that's pretty right on. Like I said, there are things in terms of modern day that might not hold up, but a film altogether, in terms of the way that it was written, in terms of the actor's portrayal, I think it really is deserving of that.
Well, and it shows that Ron Shelton, the writer-director, was himself a minor league ball player. And they say, write what you know. And he played for 5 or 6 years before he finally realized, I'm probably not making it to the big show. And so he went back to college for a degree in sculpture and fine art. And after doing that, I guess moved to LA and started to do some screenwriting and contributed to a couple different films like Under Fire and Best of Times. And of course, Best of Times is also a sports film. It's football. And that is with Kurt Russell. And Kurt Russell did help Ron Shelton in developing this script. He kind of gave him some advice because Kurt Russell was also a minor league ball player before he got injured. And so he helped him to put this idea together and was supposed to play Crash Davis, or at least was one of the, was kind of who they had penciled in for it. But he went on, I guess, a long trip to Europe. And by the time he came back, they had already cast Costner in the role. But he really did want to play it. But apparently he loved Costner and Robin's performance so much that he wrote them fan mail when the film came out because he thought they did such a great job with it.
Random.
Yeah. But Tim Robbins was actually not who the studio wanted. They wanted Anthony Michael Hall to play the part. And Shelton did have a session with him, and he showed up not having read the script, because some accounts are that he just kind of felt like, oh, I'm a big star at this moment, and I don't really need to read for it. Others have that he'd been out partying, and he came in half asleep, and so there are different accounts of that. But apparently, they did say, well, how about you go read the script tonight and come back tomorrow, and we'll try this again. And he came back and admitted he'd only read half the script, and Shelton just walked out of the room. He's like, you know what, fuck this. I'm not casting this guy. He obviously doesn't really care or get it. And
it's a good thing for, Sarandon and Robbins that he didn't get it.
Right, because that is how they got together, is on this film.
Yep.
Because Sarandon was actually living, I want to say, on like an oceanside town in Italy when this film was...
Italy or France?
I thought it was Italy.
Could be.
And was living with a man there, and I think they had a child, and she actually spent her own money to fly back and audition for this role, because the studio, as we said, was not really seriously considering her. And so she came back, and while they were filming this, she and Robbins developed an attraction for each other, and both claim nothing happened until the film wrapped.
Lies. Sorry. Of course they have to claim that.
Even though everyone
Where
said,
was social media back in 1988?
right, or why wasn't the paparazzi following them around with
Just saying.
night vision lenses? But a lot of people were really considered for these roles. Crash Davis, other than Kurt Russell, Jeff Bridges, Don Johnson,
Mel Gibson, Tom Berenger, Nick Nolte,
Yep.
Kurt Russell.
Michael Keaton, Tommy Lee Jones,
That's too many.
Stephen Lang, Christopher Lambert, Bill Paxton, Ron Perlman, Dennis Quaid,
Bill Paxton might not have been bad.
and Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone.
No, thank God.
Richard Gere.
Actually, this is one of my most beloved Kevin Costner movies, I think. I mean, I don't think Waterworld really ranks anywhere.
For anyone. I would agree, though. I think Costner plays the same character in most films, but I think that this is one of the roles that it fit perfectly. You know, he's taking it seriously, but there are moments of levity where he sort of, laughs things off, but you can tell there's a tragedy under the surface. And there are moments when he lets that show through, but other times he plays things off as a joke. I think one of his best scenes is the one where, I know most people would name that speech of the things he believes in, which has prompted a million people to make their own I believe lists. But he's claimed he never really felt like he nailed that speech.
He didn't.
I thought there were moments where it wasn't entirely convincing.
He didn't. He needed pauses. It was like that. It was too quick.
But to me, the scene was the one where he is up to bat, and they shot it handheld, and so it makes you feel his nervousness, and it's where he's talking to himself in his head, and then he'll break that and speak out loud a little bit, but where he's showing how he's trying to talk himself into getting this hit and calm himself down, but he can't do it. He's getting so nervous and frustrated that I thought that really summed up what was going on in Crash Davis's psyche. And you forget it's Kevin Costner and he's Crash Davis in that moment where he's really trying hard to use his skills and to be calm, but he's getting himself all worked up and nervous. And I think that captures what really goes on in any sports ball, to quote John Hodgman, any sports ball player's head when they get frustrated and nervous and are trying to be calm about it.
I'm not letting you gaslight me. Keep going. Production notes.
So Sybil Shepherd and Bruce Willis were also considered for Annie and Crash.
Yeah, but they're too busy doing moonlighting.
Right. And some other choices for the part for Nuke. Charlie Sheen was actually up for it, and he plays almost the same character in Major League as Wild Thing. So I thought that was a really, really interesting twist there. But some of the other women that were considered for the role were Isabella Rossellini, Michelle Griffith, Michelle Pfeiffer, Carrie Fisher, Deborah Winger, Kelly McGillis, Mary Steenburgen, Glenn Close. And Ron Shelton really wanted Kay Lenz, but they didn't think she was marketable enough. But Kate Capshaw and Gina Davis also were considered for the role. But I think we know that, again,
Serena was the right pick.
Yeah. And speaking of Charlie Sheen, he actually was committed to the movie 8 Men Out, which is another Orion picture, and Shelton had shopped this movie around everywhere and didn't think anyone was going to take it. And he really didn't think Orion would take it because they already had 8 Men Out in the works. And Tim Robbins even auditioned when he auditioned for this, he was up for one of the roles in 8 Men Out, which is an amazing movie. If you've never seen 8 Men Out, it is
Haven't.
It's another baseball movie we'll have to look at. It's brilliant. But he took the role in this instead, and I think, again, much to his benefit, even though in 8 Men Out he would have been with one of his best friends, John Cusack. Yeah, Orion really took a chance with this one, and this is one of the times when that paid off, because Orion took too many chances, And that's what eventually put them out of business. So, unfortunately, they're long gone. But every time you see that Orion logo, you just don't know what you're going to get. You might get something amazing and brilliant, and sometimes you might get UHF.
You sucky F.
Now, one of the scenes in the movie that I know was not one of your favorites because it seemed very movie-like and not like something that would really happen, the rainout scene, when they turn on the sprinklers and they go sliding down all over the baseball field and make a big mess of the place, that is actually based on real events. When Shelton was playing in the minor leagues, they decided there was a game at the end of the year that they didn't want to play, and so they turned on all the sprinklers to ensure a rainout. But the owner of the team rented a helicopter and dried the field so that they'd have to play the game. So you don't see the helicopter in the movie, but of course the sprinkler scene is actually based on real events.
It just felt like filler, though. It's sad, but that's what I felt like.
I felt like it did show, though, a lot of the goofiness and silliness that goes on in sports and behind the scenes and
shenanigans.
Yeah, because we want to play it all as these are
shenanigans,
modern day warriors and soldiers of sport and this kind of thing, and we play it up so
they're
seriously.
Big children.
Yeah,
no,
I mean,
who doesn't think that they're big children?
I know some people.
Okay.
But I think, even the smart ones say it themselves, I get to play a game for a living.
Exactly. They're big children. Like, it's just, I get to play all day.
Right.
Literally, you get to play all day.
The line,
I'm not hating. I'm just saying.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think, again, a lot of the smartest players will admit to that. They know. And even though this is their job, and even though there's the constant fear of losing your job and not being as great as you once were, I think deep down the best know that it is still a game, even though it's become huge business, of course. And this film actually helped to sort of resurrect interest in minor league ball. One of the producers, Mount, he actually was a part owner in the Durham Bulls. And that is why they ended up filming there, even though they allowed Shelton to go around and look at different ballparks and decide where he really wanted to do this. He did
had way more access.
Yes. He had incredible access, and he loved the field. And he really, really liked the owner, Miles Wolff, who was the owner at the time and who was doing of the Bulls. And he was doing a lot of innovative things. And really, Shelton in this film are credited with helping to bring minor league ball back into interest and prominence. But people like Miles Wolff really helped to push that in doing things like founded the first modern independent league. What is it? The American Association. He was the commissioner of for many, many years until recently. And he also founded a periodical about minor league baseball. And so he had a lot of influence, and he and Shelton got along really well. And I think that's also why that was, part of why they wanted to film with at the Bulls Park as well. So, and of course, as we said, just amazing access to it as well. One of my favorite lines in the film is when Crash tells Nuke, "I hear you couldn't hit water if you fell out of a fucking boat." The best part is that's actually a real thing that Tommy Lasorda said in reference to a weak hitter on the San Diego Padres. He was the Dodgers manager at the time, so that's lifted from real life. Kevin Costner's number 8 was actually Ron Shelton's number when he played, or at least the last number that he had when he played minor league ball himself. So that was a nice little tie-in. The costume designer had done some actual research to find that out. Now, the name of the character, Crash Davis, is actually the name of a real Durham Bulls player from the 40s, and they thought he was dead. And so whenever they went to go start filming, on the first day of filming, they got a call from him, and an assistant came up to Shelton and said, "Hey, Crash Davis is on the phone, and he wants to talk to you about the film." And he's like, "Bullshit." He didn't believe it was actually Crash Davis on the phone, so Shelton said, "Ask him how many doubles he hit in 1948. And the assistant came back and said, 50. He was like, oh, fuck, it really is Crash Davis. And so he invited him to the set. He didn't want to get sued, and talked to him a while. And the real Crash said, well, does he end up with the girl in the end? And of course he does. He said, fine, use my name. That's cool. So just as long as his name ended well in the film, or his namesake, he was perfectly happy with it. Did you know Paula Abdul choreographed Tim Robbins' bar dance moves?
Yes, and then she was pissed off because she was supposed to go and choreograph the moves, and then she was supposed to get a bit part in the actual movie, and she did not. Someone
had promised her that incorrectly.
Yeah, and Ron Shelton was like, nope.
And apparently she walked off screaming after that. But yeah, that that was one of her early forays into Hollywood.
So do you know what team the actual Durham Bulls farm into? Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know what teams they actually did?
Oh.
No, you don't,
I read this, but I don't remember. What?
I do know.
Oh, do you
I
know?
know.
You do? Is that why you asked the question?
Well, I thought I would actually make you look smart because you would know the answer. But since you don't, you epically failed. It was the Atlanta Braves, and then
I should have known that.
2013, it switched to the Tampa Bay Rays.
Oh, and I should have known that too.
Yeah, you should have, sucker.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I did not know that.
I was trying to set you up for success.
What I did know, though, is that...
I'm pulling a magic trick out of my ass, ladies and gentlemen.
It's called redirection. Is that... because North Carolina is tobacco country, that Bull Durham is actually what Durham, North Carolina has been called. It was the nickname because the W.T. Blackwell and Company, Bull Durham Tobacco, was produced there. And so that's what the team was named for, was the tobacco that was being produced in that area. And the Bull...
Tobacco, what's that?
Even though we didn't see much smoking or dip use chew in the film, did we?
We saw a little bit of dip.
Yeah, there were a couple scenes.
Not a ton.
Although an interesting story about the chew, Big League Chew, as we all know, is the shredded bubble gum that you can put in your mouth and hold against your cheek like it's tobacco, even though it's bubble gum. Well, Big League Chew was actually an idea of a couple of players who were, just messing around one day while they were waiting to play, and they were talking about having a type of bubble gum that would be like chewing tobacco. And one of those guys, not only did they end up pitching this idea and it actually was produced, one of those guys was actually a pitcher for the Yankees, and his name was Jim Bouton. And Jim Bouton wrote a famous book called Ball 4. And Ball 4 was the first book that really told what was going on behind the scenes in Major League Sports, specifically baseball. And he was vilified at the time for doing this. And the book was not really like a tell-all telling everyone's dirty stories. It was more just talking about all the hijinks and craziness that would go on behind the scenes and telling stories about the time that Mickey Mantle, and he and Mickey Mantle had a beef for a while over this, that Mickey Mantle went out drinking the night before, came in, wasn't supposed to play, but ended up having to pinch hit, but he had a bad hangover and did hit the ball. And I can't remember if he got a home run, but anyway, no one knew this. But when this book came out, that story was in there, and there were all kinds of stories like this. And so it was the first book of its type that really told all this stuff that was going on behind the scenes. And many of the books that have come out afterwards, like The Bronx Zoo, credit Ball 4 with being the book that sort of allowed them to do this or broke that door wide open for telling what was going on behind the scenes, because before it was considered something you just didn't do, was to talk about what was going on back there. And this was from an active player who was a very good player. And so, but people hated him. Like, apparently Pete Rose yelled, "Fuck you, Shakespeare," at him from the Reds dugout after the book came out. And the commissioner of baseball at the time felt scandalized by this whole thing. So Ball 4, though, interesting enough, was adapted into a very short-lived television show in the 70s that even included some very progressive things like a gay ball player. It was never expressly said that he was gay, but it was hinted at. And I've never seen the show, so I don't know if it was just played for laughs or if it was meant as a social commentary. I don't know. But apparently the show was very, very poorly written. And part of the problem was that you couldn't use the type of language you'd actually use in the locker room. So it was hard for the show to work because you couldn't do that. And in the film, of course, they use all of the cursing that's going on behind the scenes. And someone said, well, what if they ever want to play this on television? And Shelton was like, fuck that. I hope they never even play it on a fucking plane, because he wanted it to sound like a real sports team would in the locker room. He didn't want to sanitize it. But the reason I wanted to specifically bring up Ball 4 was because some people, just in my internet research, because like I said, I've never seen it, have said that some of the lines and scenarios in Major League are things that they feel might have been lifted, and some of the humor might have been lifted from Ball 4, or at least inspired by Jim Bouton's Ball 4.
Major League or Bull Durham?
Sorry, Bull Durham, pardon me. Is that I keep coming back to Major League. Is that because Major League just feels, like I said, like the humorous version of this. But I think that it's very interesting. I need to go in and look at Ball 4 now. So,
yeah, this is Ball 4, and we're walking. We're walking.
I did just want to mention that, if you don't know, Sarandon and Robbins, of course, got together after this, and he ended up directing Sarandon in Dead Man Walking. All right. Did you have any other production notes or pieces you wanted to bring in?
Yeah. Robbins liked to wear band shirts, specifically bands that he liked.
Yes.
So you'll see that he's wearing, in the interview scene at the very end, he's wearing a Fishbone shirt, which is a ska punk band. He's also seen wearing Iron Maiden and Motley Crue throughout. So if you look at Nuke is pretty much, if he's not in a baseball uniform, he's wearing a band shirt.
Yes. Yeah, and promoting the bands that he likes.
Correct.
Now, did you hear about when they were going to have a celebration for this film at the 15th anniversary of it in 2003 at the Baseball Hall of Fame? Did you read about what happened? Apparently, the Hall of Fame president, Dale Petrusky, he had been on the White House staff during the Reagan administration, and he didn't like Tim Robbins and Susan Sarandon's stance on the Iraq War. And he said that their stance undermined the U.S. position, and that he rescinded the invitation, basically. Costner said, well, I think that, isn't that what makes democracy work? Isn't that rescinding the invitation kind of against the whole principle of what we fight for and profess to be about, is about expressing our beliefs and being able to speak out for the things that we believe in? So Costner defended it, but they never, I don't think they went ahead with the whole ceremony. I'm not sure.
Wow. Well, times they are changing.
Funny you mention that, actually. That is part of the theme in Bob Roberts, a film that Tim Robbins wrote, which is more relevant now than ever, and it's one that we will definitely watch. I won't talk about it here, but if you've never seen Bob Roberts, it is truly, I think, Tim Robbins' greatest achievement as a writer-director. And if you don't know all of Tim Robbins' other works, then have a look. But acting-wise, he's been in a million things that we're not going to go through here. So I did want to mention, though, that Ron Shelton also wrote and directed White Men Can't Jump.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that was also him.
Oh, boy. Yeah, it's funny. Anyway, interesting things happen when you pigeonhole women. Notice there's only one woman in there.
And it's Rosie Perez.
Yeah. So, which she does a great job with that role, from what she was given. I did have two actually additional things. Number one, in Durham, there is a walking tour of all of the locations. So there's that. We'll put that up on the website. Secondarily, there is also a Bull Durham beer, company.
Oh,
now.
really?
Yeah, and so they brew actually at the ballpark.
Nice.
Yeah, and then so you can go ahead and get yourself some Bull Durham beer.
Does it taste as good as Bull Durham tobacco? Do they have a flavor for that?
No one wants that flavor. Just like no one wants any more production notes.
Oh.
Bump.
Ouch.
You set yourself up for that, I feel like.
Well, last production note.
Oh, God, of course.
Robert Wool, who played the pitching coach, Larry Hockett, who also went on to do Arliss. He started that show right after this and was, the creator, producer. He did a ton of things on Arliss, and a lot of people think he was inspired to do that show after doing Bull Durham. But one of the funniest lines in the film about how candlesticks make a great wedding present was actually improv'd. That whole scene, he was just supposed to say, "Oh, well, I thought something troublesome was going on here." He had a very basic line, and they did it a couple of times, and they said, "Well, now you just do one for you." And so he came out, and they're talking about what to get the couple for their wedding. And he says, well, candlesticks always make a nice gift, and find out what's on their registry. And he goes through that whole section. That was based on a conversation he had just had with his wife. Yeah,
yep.
About another couple that was getting married. And they were going to cut that scene. And because the producers were like, well, that doesn't really fit with the flow, and with the, it kind of makes it lag, and it doesn't fit in with the plot. And Shelton said, the film has a structure, but it doesn't really have this strictly defined plot that we're veering away from with these vignettes. That's kind of part of this thing, is that baseball is about these little moments and vignettes, and so we're going to keep that in there. And it's become one of the, the most beloved scenes in it, because it's just so funny that the meeting at the mound is involving finding a chicken for one of the characters, who I think Serrano in Major League was based on, and also about what to get for the wedding. So,
yep. Oh, I forgot I had two more. Shenanigans. There's just so much. Let's have that conversation, because this movie is so well beloved. You should definitely watch the commentary with Costner and Robbins. That shit's hysterical. Criterion did a release in 2018 for the 30th anniversary, so it's in 4K, and there's actually a commentary with Shelton, and then there's the commentary with Costner and Robbins. So if you can get that version. There's also a book, The Church of Baseball, which is literally regarding the making of baseball. So the making of this movie, Bull Durham. So there you go, and that's production notes.
Well, I think
it's not production notes.
Well, we do have to give one last thing to...
Oh my God, you had to one last thing it again?
To Trey Wilson.
Again?
Who played the coach, and he died right after this film came out, so at 40. So we had to give a little shout out to Trey. Also Nathan Arizona from Raising Arizona.
I'll go ahead and I'll pour out some of my Monster for him.
Okay, please do.
Sounds good. So soundtrack smashes. Hey. So the Bull Durham soundtrack, actually, if you can find it on vinyl, it goes anywhere from $30 to $60, $24 on CD. You had such people like Joe Cocker, Los Lobos, George Thorogood, John Fogerty, Bonnie Wallace, just to name a couple of people that are on it. So it's a pretty interesting soundtrack in and of itself. So did you have a favorite though?
Well, despite it being one of the best uses of center field in any baseball movie,
put me in cold. I'm ready to play today.
That is not my
Truly.
Choice. What's that?
I said truly.
Because it's used in every baseball movie, but I think that, including my friend Ryan Sarnowski's film school film about baseball, but I think that my favorite in the film was Baseball Boogie.
I need a pinch hitter, cause my last man just fanned out. So get your bat ready, baby. Get your bat ready, baby.
I think it tied it back to baseball's roots and showed that baseball has a long history connected to our popular culture in this country. And of course, music has always been a huge part of pop culture. So I like that it's that old song. It's got that old sound, and it encapsulates our national history and connection to baseball.
Yeah. No, mine has to be 60-Minute Man by Billy Ward and his Dominoes. I mean, 15 minutes of kissing, 15 minutes of teasing, 15 minutes of squeezing, and then 15 minutes of something else. I'm not going to repeat it.
Yes.
If your man ain't treating you right, come up and see old Dan. I'll rock 'em, roll 'em all night long. I'm a 60-minute man.
And I think that does, you're right.
I think that is a very, that does tie in. I think that's what Annie would have picked.
Yes. Yep, because, we're not just talking about the bat and balls in this film can be many things. There's a lot of innuendo.
So much innuendo. So much innuendo. So, I mean, why show me this movie other than, it's pitchers and catchers, reporting time, and spring training is here. And I think we got our first games. This is literally, I think, going to be released when the first games are happening.
Mm-hmm.
So that's exciting.
Yes. And yeah, not only did it seem very seasonal, but I think it's one of those movies that even though it is on a lot of best of lists and a lot of people talk about it, that there's still a lot of people who have not seen it. And I knew you hadn't seen it, and I felt like you would like the quality of the writing and the acting. And I also needed to show you something that
didn't suck.
Yes, that didn't make you
horrifically and made me want to run and scream from the room. Yeah, so that didn't do that. So thank you for that.
Yes, no cult classics this time, or more obscure fare.
No, very obscure. I want to cry and gouge my eyes out, and basically wish I had wasted the last 2 hours of my life. So thanks.
You're welcome.
I really appreciate that. I did not feel that way watching this movie.
Good, and you got a lot of actual laughs out of it, like out loud laughs, because some of the lines really caught you off guard. Because again, it's not what you're expecting. Now, this film sets the tone very differently at the start with that great voiceover by Susan Sarandon that sets the stage for this film, where she talks about having tried all the different religions, and there's 108 stitches in a baseball and 108 beads in the rosary, and how she had, tried everything, but it always came back to baseball. And so that sets it up as being different. But again, I just felt like it might not have been something you would have sought out yourself. So I thought that that you would appreciate seeing it. And I think that it really did catch you off guard in some cases, because it went directions that you didn't expect it to go. It didn't go in a lot of the cliche directions, not only with the plot, but with the line delivery. I think it sometimes just made these crazy jumps over talking about chakras jammed and breathing through your eyelids, or when Tim Robbins is wearing the garter and Kevin Costner has to turn around and say, "Rose goes in the front, big guy." There were just lots of little great lines that caught you off guard, and me not having seen it in a while. And I was reminded of just how funny this movie is.
Cheeky, I would say. Yes,
it is.
It's very cheeky.
Not to be too literal with as much as they show Tim Robbins' ass.
Super cheeky. So anything else for Bull Durham? Or do you think we did it justice?
Oh, I think real justice is seeing the film. But yes, I think hopefully we've given you reasons to see this if you haven't. And also reasons to understand why some people who are rating sports films call it overrated. One of which was Ben Shapiro, who...
Really? You calling people out today?
Who I can't stand.
You calling people out today? All right. Well, I thought we were going for a PG, nice,
Well, the reason I put that out there specifically is when Ben Shapiro put out there that the movie was overrated, the Durham Bulls said, "You're overrated."
There you go.
And I've read a number of articles bashing on the film, and it's interesting how angry they are. Like, they sound like ranting children. And
well, do they like sports? I mean,
I was going to say,
if you don't like sports, you're really not going to like this movie.
No, they're sports writers who don't like it. And again, I think it's because
it's not a baseball movie.
Yes, it's been lumped in with other
a typical baseball
right.
movie.
It's not the natural. It's not
Field of Dreams.
right. It's a very different one, and I almost think, like I said, it belongs on the periphery. I just feel like I said, it walks a line, and that doesn't sit well with everyone. Now, one of the
Sits well
articles,
with me.
one of the articles didn't like that they were playing teams that they really wouldn't play, but that's getting extremely technical.
I know, but you're dealing with sports, so
Yes.
you have fanatics either way. So that's really what it is.
Yes, and quite honestly, I'm known for being a bit nitpicky on that type of thing too.
Oh,
So
type A personality? No.
maybe a little bit,
No.
perhaps.
So thanks again, you guys, for listening and taking this trip as we kick off baseball season.
Would that be a kickoff?
Yes,
As we
bitch.
throw the first pitch of baseball season?
The first pitch was already thrown on the first spring training game, so no.
Hopefully we don't hit the first fly ball or get the first foul of baseball season.
You've already fouled so many times. You're like the pop-up king right now.
You're out of here!
You're out of here. I'm the umpire in this bitch.
Yes,
FY.
you
Yes,
are.
I know. So thanks for listening to us.
I've been ejected.
Yes, pretty much. Shh, if you've been ejected. Thanks for listening and
is
subscribing. Shut the fuck up. Can I just close it out for the love? Thank you. God.
Sure.
Thanks for listening. Please rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast. Goddamn gaslighter. Check out our website, youhaven'tseenwhatmovie.com. We'll have those links for you for that walking tour and other fun things regarding Bull Durham. As always, check out our social media, Insta, Facebook, Twitter, at You Haven't Seen What Movie, and let us know what you think and review so that other wonderful folks can find our awesome podcast as
Indeed.
well.
I was agreeing with you.
I know. Gosh, you just have to interrupt. It's the most amazing thing. Because really, everybody should really listen to what married sounds like before they get married.
See, I thought I was being supportive.
That's what's wrong sometimes.
It basically don't help.
So remember, sometimes we don't need help. It's amazing. I'm not asking for help. When I need help, I'll actually ask.
Point taken.
Yes, men are from Mars, women are from Venus, all that bullshit.
Or the Kleenex line from Clue.
Men are like tissues. Soft, strong, and disposable. I don't think that's quite the line, but it's pretty freaking close. Anyway, stop gaslighting me. I'm too caffeinated for this. So remember,
Be kind.
rewind.
Bye.
Bye. No Max Dugan, no Max
No.
Dugan, no Max Dugan, no Max
I was not
Dugan,
gonna say Max
no
Dugan is a baseball
no
player.
Max Dugan, no Max Dugan, no Max
Maybe
Dugan.
that's how he got his money.
No Max Dugan, no Max Dugan, no Max Dugan, no Max Dugan.
Did you know, though, that Kevin Costner actually was playing his own ball in this, that he's a switch hitter? He had a couple of home runs, and he insisted on throwing people out even when the cameras weren't rolling.
I mean, he might be a switch hitter. These are questions.
Oh.
These are questions.
Oh, talk about hate mail. First Harrison
Why?
Ford, now this.
Harrison Ford's love scenes suck. Kevin Costner's don't.
So that's why Harrison Ford should not have had the role in this. Yes, indeed, you're right.
Agreed. He'd
Yeah.
be horrible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I don't think it would have worked.
Wouldn't have worked.
I think he was perfect for it.
Strikeouts are boring. Besides that, they're fascist.